Thanksgiving's always been a weird holiday for me. Not bad, not great, just weird. I guess when you grow up in a family that treats love like a ration meal, you get used to faking smiles over turkey and pretending everything's fine. But this year was different. This year broke something in me. My name's Trevor. I'm 19 now, first year of college. Or, I was supposed to be. I'll get to that. I've always been the quiet kid in the family. Not shy, just observant. My older sister, Brooke, was the golden child. Straight A student, cheer captain, did one semester of college before dropping out to pursue motherhood with a guy who worked the night shift at a vape store. Our parents called it a noble choice. I called it Brooke being Brooke. She now has 3 kids, lives 10 minutes from my parents, and somehow still gets treated like she's curing cancer while I'm expected to be grateful for leftover scraps of attention. Growing up, it was always about her. Every family vacation, tailored around what Brooke wanted. Every holiday, Brooke's schedule. Every argument, I was told to back down because she had more on her plate. And every time I tried to speak up, my mom would tilt her head and say, "Don't be difficult, Trevor. Your sister needs us more right now." But I dealt with it. I kept my head down, worked hard, and got accepted into a pretty decent university. It was an Ivy League, but it was solid, and more importantly, it was mine. I had plans. I wanted to major in biomedical engineering. I had been working after school and summers since I was 14, but let's be honest, tuition is steep. The only reason college was even on the table was because of Grandpa's fund. Grandpa was one of the only family members who saw me. Not just looked at me, but saw me. My mom's dad, a retired mechanic with hands like sandpaper and a voice that could quiet a room without shouting. He didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. He used to sit me down in the garage and teach me how to fix things. Not just engines or tools, he taught me how to think. And when I was 16, he pulled me aside during a cookout, handed me a warm soda, and said, "I started a fund for you. Been putting money in it since you were born. Don't tell your parents yet. Just know it's there when you need it." I remember holding that can like it was gold. So when I got accepted into college, I told my parents about the fund. They didn't say much. My mom nodded and said, "That's sweet of your grandfather." My dad gave a non-committal grunt. I figured that was the end of it. A week later, Grandpa called me and said the fund had been transferred to a joint custodial account, with my parents' names on it, too. "Just legal formality," he muttered. "They won't touch it." Spoiler, they did. But I didn't know that yet. Summer came and went, and I kept getting delayed updates about the financial paperwork. My mom said she was sorting out FAFSA stuff, and my dad told me to just be patient. I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? This was my future. They wouldn't lie about this. Orientation week rolled around, and I still hadn't paid tuition. I kept calling the registrar's office, emailing, refreshing portals, nothing. Finally, the university sent me a notification I'd been withdrawn due to non-payment. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Then I marched downstairs with my laptop and showed it to my mom. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, honey," she said, spooning yogurt into a bowl. "Yeah, about that. We needed to have a talk." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean?" She set the bowl down and gave me this look, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Your sister's kids needed help, Trevor. She's raising 3 children, and they've been struggling. The oldest needs therapy, and the twins are in daycare. We used the money to help with that." I didn't say anything. Then my dad chimed in from the living room, not even looking away from the TV. "It's not like you were going anywhere, kid. Be real. College isn't for everyone." I couldn't breathe. Not from rage, just from the shock of it all. I thought it had to be a joke, or maybe a temporary loan. But when I asked them if there was any money left, my mom said, "We did what was best for the family." The rest of the week was a blur. I didn't leave my room. Didn't eat. Didn't sleep. I didn't even tell Grandpa. I was ashamed, and, honestly, I was scared of what he'd say. Maybe he'd side with them. Maybe he'd say, "Family first," like they always did. But then Thanksgiving came. I almost didn't go. I was 2 days deep into a job stocking shelves at a hardware store, trying to earn something while figuring out what the hell to do next. But Grandpa called and said he'd made apple pie, just like he used to when I was a kid, and I couldn't say no to that. So I went. Dressed nice. Brought sparkling cider. Smiled when my sister's kids screamed, and climbed over everything like gremlins on sugar highs. I shook my dad's hand, hugged my mom, nodded politely to my sister and her dead-eyed husband. I even helped set the table. We sat down to eat. Grandpa was at the far end, carving the turkey like some ancient king overseeing a feast. My sister talked nonstop about her kids' milestones. My parents fawned over every sentence. I just passed plates and chewed quietly. And then, as Mom ladled gravy onto mashed potatoes, she said it. She looked straight at me and said, "We used your college fund to help your sister's kids. They deserved it more." I froze. Everyone else kept eating. My dad snorted and added, "It's not like you were going anywhere." That's when I saw Grandpa's hand pause. Just for a second. He slowly set the carving knife down. His face didn't move, but his eyes looked sharper than I'd ever seen them. He pushed his chair back with a slow scrape against the tile and stood up. The room quieted. Forks clinked to a stop. Even Brooke stopped talking. Then Grandpa said, calm as anything, "Funny, because I left that money in Trevor's name." And the room went silent. No one said a word. My mom blinked like she'd been slapped. My dad suddenly found his peas real interesting. Brooke's jaw twitched. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring down at my plate, trying to decide whether I was about to cry or laugh. But Grandpa wasn't done. He looked at me, then back at them, and said. There was a silence that felt like it bent time itself. Grandpa's voice had sliced clean through the gravy-thick awkwardness. For a moment, nobody moved. My mom's hand hovered midair, still gripping the gravy ladle. My sister's husband coughed once into his napkin and avoided everyone's eyes. One of the twins dropped a roll onto the floor, and the soft thud sounded like a cannon going off. And Grandpa, he just stood there, his palms pressed flat on the table, his gaze flicking between my parents like he was reading an open book he'd already memorized. "Trevor," he said, not looking at me, "how much of that account did you see?" I blinked. My throat was dry. I never got access, I managed. They said they were working on it. Grandpa muttered, and his jaw tightened. "And your tuition?" "Withdrawn. Non-payment." My mom let out a nervous little chuckle, one of those laughs people make when they're trying to claw back control. "Dad, come on. Don't make this a whole thing. It's not like we stole it. It was just sitting there, and Brooke needed help. The kids." "Stop." Grandpa's voice was low, but final. My mom shut up instantly. He looked at me then. "I named that fund after you. It's been in your name since the day you were born. I only added your parents for legal reasons. Never thought I'd have to babysit grown adults." Brooke finally spoke. "Can we not do this now? It's Thanksgiving. And Trevor, seriously, you don't even like college. You told me last year you weren't sure about going." "That's not what I said," I replied quietly. "I said I wasn't sure where I wanted to go yet. But I was going." Dad leaned back in his chair with a sigh, like this was all beneath him. "Look, it's done. The money's gone. You think this family doesn't make sacrifices for you too, kid? Your sister needed help. What were we supposed to do? Let the kids suffer while you play scientist?" And there it was. That's what it always came down to. Brooke's kids were tangible, loud, present, needy. My dreams were invisible, easy to ignore, easy to minimize. Grandpa sat back down slowly, his plate untouched. He didn't say another word that night, and neither did I. The weeks after Thanksgiving were some of the loneliest of my life. The silence wasn't just from me. It was from Grandpa, too. I didn't know what was happening behind the scenes, but something shifted. When I called him a few days later, he answered in short phrases. "Working on something," he said. "Be patient." Meanwhile, things at home got colder. I tried not to pick fights, but every interaction with my parents felt like a minefield. They acted like I was the problem, like I was punishing them for being good people. "You're sulking," my mom snapped one afternoon when I didn't answer her about dinner plans. "I'm thinking," I said. "You're being ungrateful." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because if I opened my mouth, I didn't know what would come out. And my sister? Brooke acted like nothing had happened. She texted me a few times with TikToks and memes like we were best friends. At one point she asked if I could help her set up her kids' Christmas gifts. I didn't even reply. Then Grandpa called me the week before Christmas and asked if I'd stop by. Alone. His place was quieter than I remembered, quieter than usual. The walls were lined with old photos, dusty toolboxes, and faded calendars. He poured me a mug of coffee and sat me down at the kitchen table like we used to do when I was 10 and learning to patch up a bike tire. Then he handed me a folder. "Read it." Inside were photocopies of bank statements, transaction logs, and a printout of a college savings plan, one with my full name on it. There were dozens of entries labeled auto deposit, monthly, going back nearly 2 decades. Then, abruptly, a single withdrawal, $62,000. Brooke's name was in the memo line. I didn't even know they could access this without telling you, I said, my hands shaking. They shouldn't have been able to, Grandpa muttered. But the way I set it up, they technically had power of attorney while you were still a minor. And your mother requested an early disbursement for medical expenses 2 weeks after your 18th birthday. But that's illegal. It's gray, he said, and tapped the folder. I've been talking to some people. But more than that, what gets me is the lying. They didn't even tell me. Your mom forged a letter. Said you approved it. I felt like I was going to throw up. They always do this, I said. They always say it's for the good of the family, but it's really just for Brooke. I don't matter to them. Not unless I'm useful. Grandpa looked at me hard. You matter to me. You always have. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. Not yet. Not fully. Then he slid a key across the table. What's this? Garage. Bottom drawer of the red toolbox. Open the envelope. That night, I found the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note that said, if you ever need to disappear for a while, use this. Folded inside was a check for $5,000. Cashable. No strings. And below that, a short list of job postings, engineering internships, remote apprenticeships, even a contact name at a startup in Oregon. I sat there for hours, just reading that note over and over again. But the thing was, I didn't want to disappear. I wanted to fight. Christmas was the next storm. I knew it would be. And maybe I should have stayed home or ghosted everyone like I originally planned. But something in me needed to see it. Needed to witness it one more time before I made my move. Brooke showed up in a brand new SUV, one I later learned had been co-signed by my dad. Her kids were wearing matching designer outfits. They ran around screaming, tearing open presents while my mom clapped and filmed them like it was the Macy's parade. I got one gift. A pair of socks. Practical, my mom chirped. You said you were working now, my dad added. You'll need those. I looked over at the tree, overflowing with boxes labeled Brooke, Brooke's kids, to the best mommy ever. And then I looked back at my socks. I felt something in me snap. But I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. I just excused myself, walked to the kitchen, and called Grandpa. He answered on the second ring. You ready? He asked. Yeah, I said. Let's do it. The week after Christmas, I stayed quiet. I went to work. I nodded when my parents told me to clean the garage. I even agreed to babysit Brooke's twins one afternoon while she took a mental health break. But underneath that, I was planning. I was meeting with Grandpa's attorney. I was gathering screenshots, documents, and bank printouts. And more than anything, I was preparing for war. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to make emotional appeals that would fall on deaf ears. I was going to outsmart them. And soon, they'd realize exactly what I'd become. Not the quiet, grateful son they could guilt into silence. Not the spare part of the family, but something else entirely. And the first blow would land on New Year's Eve. There was something poetic about hitting rock bottom on New Year's Eve. You'd think starting a new year would feel like a clean slate. But for me, it felt like the final nail in a coffin I hadn't even realized I was lying in. I was 19, living in my childhood bedroom surrounded by old posters of bands I didn't listen to anymore, working part-time at a hardware store while pretending not to hear my parents whisper about how I was wasting my potential. Brooke's kids had just gotten a brand new trampoline in the backyard. I got an expired Starbucks gift card. The worst part? I started to believe them. I started to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe I was too soft. Maybe I didn't fight hard enough for college. Maybe Brooke did deserve the money more. She had kids. She had responsibilities. I was just one guy with a backpack full of notebooks and a heart full of stupid dreams. The doubts hit hardest at night. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, trying not to cry, trying to breathe through the weight sitting on my chest like a stone. My friends had gone off to college towns, dorm parties, study groups, futures. And me? I was spending 8 hours restocking light bulbs and pretending not to hear my coworkers call me the quiet kid with the messed up family. But somewhere in that silence, somewhere in that emptiness, something inside me started to change. I think pain does that. When the people you love rip away your foundation, you either crumble or you build something new. So I started building. Quietly. On the nights I didn't have a shift, I'd go to Grandpa's house. We'd sit in the garage, surrounded by the hum of old tools and the smell of motor oil, and he'd teach me things. real things. Not the kind of stuff you learn in a lecture hall, but the kind that makes you useful. Wiring, plumbing, engines, drafting. He even taught me how to solder, how to read blueprints, how to spot design flaws in household tools. And every single time I got something wrong, he never yelled. He'd just nod and say, "Try again." It was the first time in months I felt like I wasn't broken. One night, after we spent 3 hours fixing the starter on a rusted-out Chevy, he looked at me and said, "You're smart, Trev. Not just book smart, builder smart. Don't waste that." It stuck. During the day, I worked. At night, I learned. And somewhere in between, I started saving. It wasn't much at first. A few bucks here, $10 there. I stopped eating takeout, canceled subscriptions, sold off some old video games and tech gear. Every dollar I didn't spend, I stored in a locked metal box Grandpa gave me. He called it seed money. "Doesn't matter if it's small," he said. "What matters is you grow it." Around mid-January, I stumbled onto a subreddit for home appliance repairs. People were posting videos of broken toasters, malfunctioning air fryers, busted vacuums. Some were asking for help. Others were posting tutorials. An idea clicked. I borrowed Grandpa's old camcorder, still ran on tape, and started filming myself repairing junk appliances I found on the curb. No fancy intro, no face cam, just my hands, my tools, and my voice explaining what I was doing. I uploaded the first video under the name Fix It Trev. It got 8 views. I didn't care. I made another, then another. By the end of February, I had uploaded 10 videos. Most had under 50 views. But then I posted one about fixing a dishwasher that made a loud grinding noise, and out of nowhere, it hit 3,000 views. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of excitement, but because it was the first time in months I felt like I mattered. I started learning basic editing, added subtitles, improved my lighting. I even bought a second-hand mic with the savings from my first YouTube payout, $78.33. It wasn't much, but it felt like a start. Meanwhile, the house felt different. My parents barely talked to me anymore, and when they did, it was usually to ask why I was always holed up in Grandpa's garage. My mom accused me of being obsessed with him. My dad said I should grow up and move on. Brooke, of course, stayed chirpy and clueless. Every time she dropped by, she'd flash me that same sugary smile and say things like, "You still mad about the whole college thing?" Like it was a spilled drink. Like I should have gotten over it by now. I said nothing, but I remembered everything. And I kept planning. Grandpa was working behind the scenes, too. I didn't know all the details yet, but every week he'd drop cryptic hints. Timing's everything. Don't let them see you coming. Let them think you're weak. Makes the punch land harder. We were working on something. I just didn't know the full picture yet. But I trusted him, and I kept building. By April, my channel had 2,000 subscribers. I had partnered with a small affiliate company that sold repair kits, and suddenly I was making $300 a month. Nothing huge, but compared to where I'd started, it was gold. I took that money and reinvested it. Better tools, better camera, a real laptop. I also started freelance work online, writing repair manuals, creating diagrams, even editing videos for other small creators. Every dollar I made, I split. Half into savings, half into a new project Grandpa and I had been sketching out on graph paper. I called it the Fix Box. It was basically a subscription kit for basic home repairs, simple tools, instructions, a link to a video tutorial I'd film each month. We built 3 prototypes by hand. Grandpa said it was the best idea he'd heard in 20 years. And for the first time, I started to believe him. Then came the breaking point. It wasn't some huge blow-up. It was something small. Isn't it always? One Sunday in May, I came home from work to find my metal cash box missing. I tore my room apart. Checked every drawer, closet, under the bed, behind the dresser. Nothing. I ran downstairs and found my mom folding laundry. "Have you seen my metal box?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She didn't even blink. "Oh, that junky old thing? I gave it to your dad. Thought it was part of Grandpa's scrap. There was money in there." She frowned. "What kind of money?" "My money." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Trevor. You're living here rent-free, eating our food. Don't act like you're paying for utilities. I earned that. Every dollar." "Enough," she snapped. "Your sister's husband got laid off. We needed some help around here. Be a part of the family for once." That was it. That was the exact moment something in me shattered into place. Not broke, solidified. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't even going to try to make her understand. I was done explaining myself. I just nodded, turned around, walked out the front door, and went straight to Grandpa's. When I told him what happened, he didn't even look surprised. He just sighed, handed me a cold soda, and said, "You ready to go nuclear?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. The next day, I quit the hardware store. 2 days later, I posted a video that went semi-viral, how I turned $300 in tools into a full-time job. By June, I'd hit 10,000 subscribers. The fix box was ready for soft launch. And Grandpa? He finally told me his full plan. It was bold. It was risky, but it was ours. And if it worked, it would be the beginning of the end for everyone who had written me off. Because they thought they'd buried me. But I wasn't buried. I was planted. And I was just starting to rise. It was a warm evening in early June when everything started falling into place. I was in Grandpa's garage, sitting on an overturned milk crate, staring at a whiteboard we'd filled with notes, sketches, deadlines, and a 3-word title circled in thick red marker, the setup phase. That's what Grandpa called it. Like we were planning a heist. In a way we were. Not the kind with ski masks or vaults, but the kind that requires precision, patience, and timing. The kind where you don't break in. You let them leave the door wide open and invite you inside. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be messy. It was going to be elegant. I spent the rest of June operating like a ghost in my own house. Smiling when spoken to. Helping out when asked. Pretending like the missing cash box didn't matter. Like I wasn't uploading repair tutorials that were now getting over 100,000 views. Like I hadn't filed a quiet report with the State Department about a forged disbursement document tied to my name. Like Grandpa hadn't just met with a lawyer to restructure a trust fund in my favor. All while playing the role of the overlooked, underachieving son with a hobby channel and too much free time. My parents were so busy focusing on Brooke's drama, her husband's unemployment, her emotional exhaustion, her new Pilates addiction. They didn't notice that I had started coming home later and later, my clothes smelling like sawdust and solder. Didn't ask why I had a P.O. box. Didn't wonder why I was suddenly carrying around a brand new laptop. Didn't question why I'd stopped asking them for anything at all. Which was perfect, because the less they looked at me, the more I could move freely. In the second week of July, I launched the Fix Box. Soft. Quiet. No ads. Just a post on my channel and a mention on Reddit. I had 50 units. I sold out in 36 hours. Each box contained a simple toolkit, a how-to manual, and a QR code linking to an unlisted video. Month 1, how to fix a running toilet. It was basic, but people loved it. By the end of the month, I had 200 new subscribers, 500 email signups, and over 300 people on the wait list for the next round. I reinvested every cent into building the next batch. Grandpa and I practically lived in the garage. We printed, packed, and labeled everything ourselves. He let me use his credit card to buy supplies, and when I asked if he was sure, he just grinned and said, "Trev, this is the most fun I've had since I built your mom's treehouse. Only this time, I'm not putting a roof over someone who doesn't deserve it." Around that same time, I started reaching out to people from my past. One was Marcus, a kid I went to high school with. He was one of those overachievers who had been the president of for clubs and ran a tech newsletter. We hadn't talked much before graduation, but I remembered him saying he wanted to launch a startup for creator tools. We met for coffee at a local cafe. I told him what I was building. He stared at my sketches and said, "Dude, this could be huge." Within a week, we were brainstorming how to turn the Fix Box into an actual platform. Not just physical boxes, but full digital repair courses, tiered memberships, even an app with AR overlays for troubleshooting appliances. I didn't even realize how excited I was until I saw myself talking in the cafe window's reflection, hands flying, voice animated, face lit up in a way it hadn't been since before college fell apart. Marcus introduced me to his cousin Danny, a marketing major who offered to help with branding and outreach. I brought on another kid from Reddit, known only as Circuit Cracker, to help build the app backend. And suddenly, I had a team. We called ourselves Trev Tech, and we had plans. Meanwhile, Grandpa had his own part to play. He started attending more family events, barbecues, church cookouts, a 4th of July picnic where he wore a shirt that said, "Ask me about my favorite grandkid," with an arrow pointing to me. At first, my parents thought it was a joke. Brooke laughed awkwardly. My mom rolled her eyes. My dad muttered something about playing favorites. But when Grandpa kept doing it, bringing me up in every conversation, pulling me into photos, talking about Trevor's little project, they started getting nervous. Especially when he announced, very casually, that he was rewriting his will. "You don't need to worry about that," my mom said, laughing. "We're not after your money, Dad." He just smiled. Didn't say you were. But the look he gave her, she felt it. Around the same time, I got a call from the Office of Student Aid. They'd received my inquiry about the unauthorized use of funds tied to my education. Apparently, the letter my mother submitted to access the money had included a poorly forged signature, my own. One I could easily prove wasn't mine. They were investigating. Quietly, but thoroughly. I didn't say anything to my parents. Just watched as my mom grew more tense by the day. Watched as she started double-checking the mail. Watched as she hovered near the phone more often. Then one day in early August, she cornered me in the kitchen. "I feel like you're hiding something." I looked up from my bowl of cereal. "Like what?" "I don't know. You're always out." "You and your grandfather whisper. And you've been smug." "Smug? Yes. Like you're waiting for something to happen." I shrugged. "I guess I've just been focused." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you talking to lawyers?" "Nope," I said truthfully. "Not just lawyers." She didn't like that. And I didn't care. Because her worry wasn't about me. It wasn't about what I might be going through. It was about control. And she was losing it. Fast. Mid-August, I hit 50,000 subscribers. The Fixbox had 600 active monthly users. TrevTech's prototype app was in beta. And then, like clockwork, it happened. Brooke asked for more money. Specifically, she asked if Grandpa could help with rent this month. Apparently, her husband's new job had not panned out, and she was behind on bills. At a family dinner, she brought it up in front of everyone. "Dad," she said sweetly, "you've been helping Trevor so much." I was hoping maybe. "No," Grandpa said before she could finish. Everyone froze. "I'm sorry," she said, blinking. I said no. "But you took $62,000 from Trevor's future and didn't even say thank you. You don't get to ask for more." My mom jumped in. "Dad, that was years ago. 10 months. It was for the good of the family." "No," he said. "It was for the convenience of yours." I watched them squirm, holding back a smile. And then Grandpa turned to me. "Trevor, would you like to tell them your news?" I stood up, cleared my throat, and said, "Actually, yeah. I've been accepted into a special business accelerator program. It's competitive. Only a dozen creators selected nationwide. They're funding our product development and providing legal support. I'm moving out next week." My mom looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Brooke blinked rapidly. My dad leaned back, silent. And I just smiled. "I start pitching to investors in September," I added. "It's a 6-month program. If we meet our targets, we get follow-on funding. Equity-based." I could have added more. I could have rubbed it in. But I didn't need to. Because the silence in that room, that was better than any monologue. Later that night, Grandpa handed me a small envelope. Inside was a key. "To your new place," he said. I thought the accelerator was providing housing. "They are," he said. "But I bought you something extra." "What?" "A fixer-upper duplex. Good bones. Cheap. In your name. Call it an investment." I stared at him. "Why are you doing all this for me?" He smiled. "Because they forgot who you were." But I never did. The next few days were a blur. Packing. Paperwork. Finalizing app updates. Announcing my departure. And then, I was gone. Moved into a modest apartment in a new city, surrounded by ambition, mentorship, and momentum. My channel hit 100,000 subscribers. My business hit its first $10,000 month. And back home, the walls were starting to close in. The investigation was coming to a head. And I still had one last move left to play. By the time fall rolled in, everything was in motion. Leaves were changing. Air turning sharper. My channel crossed 150,000 subscribers. The Fixbox had become a full-fledged business with monthly recurring revenue, glowing reviews, and an official LLC. Our app, TrevTools, was being downloaded in over 30 countries. My face still wasn't on camera, just my hands and voice, but people knew me now. Not as Trevor the spare son, or Brooke's weird brother, but as the guy who could teach you how to fix your life with a wrench, a plan, and some grit. And while all that grew, the real setup back home was finally reaching its climax. I got the call in late September. The Office of Student Aid. "Mr. Owens," the woman on the line said, Our investigation into the disputed college fund withdrawal is complete. Thank you for your patience. I didn't speak. I just listened. We've confirmed that your signature was forged and that the disbursement was requested under false pretenses. The matter is now being referred to the local district attorney for potential criminal charges. We've also contacted the financial institution that processed the withdrawal. They're cooperating fully. I didn't smile. Not yet. Then came the kicker. As the original beneficiary of the 529 account, you are entitled to restitution. We're coordinating with the trust's overseer, Mr. Walter Owens. My grandfather, I said. Yes, he's been incredibly helpful. That's when I allowed myself a single nod. Checkmate was near. I didn't tell my parents right away. Why would I? They hadn't even bothered to check in on me since I moved. Not one text. Not one call. Not even a half-hearted, hope you're doing well comment on any of my videos. But Brooke? She finally reached out. I got a DM on Instagram in October. It was a selfie of her crying. I'm sorry things got weird. I miss you. Can we talk? I didn't reply. Then 2 days later, my mom called. That was rare. She never initiated contact unless she needed something. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that started like this. Trevor, we heard something strange from a friend at the bank. Something about an investigation. Please, call me back. We need to clear this up. There's no reason to make this a legal matter. I didn't call back. Because there was every reason to make this a legal matter. They took what wasn't theirs. Lied about it. Forged documents. Used me as an excuse to fund someone else's life. And then had the audacity to act like I was the selfish one for wanting it back. So no, I didn't call back. I forwarded the voicemail to Grandpa. He laughed so hard he had to sit down. A week later, they were served. I wasn't there to see it, but I got the play-by-play from Grandpa. My mom had apparently opened the door in her robe, expecting a package. Instead, she got 2 manila envelopes. One from the district attorney's office regarding pending charges of financial misrepresentation and fraud. The other a civil suit filed by me for damages, breach of fiduciary duty, and restitution of funds taken from my education account. The best part? The letterhead had my full name at the top. Trevor Owens, founder, TrevTech LLC. I wasn't the passive son anymore. I was the plaintiff. They called, texted, emailed, begged. I didn't respond to a single one. Instead, I issued all communication through my lawyer. Her name was Camila, sharp, fearless, and efficient. She'd graduated top of her class, and she hated financial abuse. Let them squirm, she told me. And squirm they did. They tried to downplay it. Tried to act like it had been a misunderstanding. But when the forged signature was presented alongside my real one, there was nothing left to argue. And the financial institution? They didn't want bad press. They offered to settle fast. My parents were cut out of the loop entirely. It was poetic. The very account they looted ended up repaying me without their consent. But I wasn't done. The restitution money came through, plus penalties. Over $70,000 in total. I didn't need it anymore. So I used it publicly. I donated half to a nonprofit that funded vocational education for low-income teens. The other half, I used to fund the first full-scale production of the Fix box across 5 states. I made a video about it. Didn't mention my family. Didn't name names. But I ended the video with a line that hit harder than any accusation. Sometimes the people who should believe in you the most don't. And that's okay. Because if you stay quiet long enough to build, one day they'll have no choice but to watch. That video hit 1.2 million views in a week. My inbox exploded. A brand deal offer from a tool company. A request to be on a business podcast. Even a school district asking if I'd build a curriculum. It was surreal. I had gone from ignored and invisible to unstoppable. Thanksgiving rolled around again. Grandpa invited me to his place for a small dinner. Just us, a few of his friends, and Marcus and Danny from TrevTech. The vibe was light, warm, joyful. And just as we were finishing dessert, Grandpa pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver ring. Old, but polished. It was my father's, he said. He gave it to me when I built my first shop. Said, it's not about money. It's about making something. And you, Trevor, you've made something bigger than any of us imagined. I slipped it on. It fit perfectly. The fallout back home wasn't pretty. The criminal charges didn't stick. First-time offense, no prior record, blah, blah, blah. But the public record? That stayed. Brooke lost her part-time job at the local daycare when the scandal made small-town news. My dad had to step down from the board of a local credit union. My mom stopped showing up to her book club. And Grandpa? He rewrote his will, made it public, and left a copy on their doorstep. Everything, his house, his land, his savings, was going to me. He didn't do it to punish them. He did it to protect me. But I can't lie. That part felt good. I haven't spoken to them since. They still try, every few months. A birthday message, a forwarded article, a half-hearted, "We're proud of you" comment under a burner account on one of my videos. But I don't engage. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Because I've learned something important. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's just living your life so fully and freely that the people who tried to break you have to watch you shine from a distance they can never cross. Now, every time I fix something, whether it's a busted motor or a broken belief, I remember who I was, who they tried to convince me I'd always be. And I smile. Because they were wrong. And I was never going nowhere. I was going everywhere. Turns out, I didn't need their map, because I built my own road.